Today is August 28th, 2014. We're here at the Shreveport Bar Center as part of the Louisiana Bar Foundation's project to videotape distinguished members of the bar and also the Shreveport Bar Association's historical initiative through our Archives Committee. My name is Larry Petit, and I have the pleasure of visiting with Charles Salley. And Mr. Salley, I'm going to ask you to start off by introducing yourself to us, and when were you born?
Okay. That's getting personal. I'm Charles Walter Salley. I was born in July the 13th, 1935, in a small town named Bernice, which is 20 miles north of Ruston.
And your parents?
My parents were Van and Naomi Salley.
And did you have brothers and sisters?
I have one brother that's 14 months younger. I am, and he lives here in Shreveport now.
And did you have, in your family, did you have lawyers before you?
We had only high school education, and some of them 10th grade education.
Where'd you go to high school? In Bernice?
Yes.
And where'd you go to college?
I went to Louisiana Tech, and I took and I knew at that time that I was going to go to law school. I knew that in the 8th grade because Dad had instilled that in my brother and I. So I got a degree in business administration and a minor in accounting because it was not my intentions to ever practice law. Dad had and Uncle Jack had started Salley Grocery Company, which ended up in Monroe and Shreveport. They had 40 salesmen and 30 trucks, so it was a big operation. And I always felt like I'd come back and work for the family.
The Salley Grocery, was it on North Market? Where did you have, there was a big
North Market
warehouse here with Salley Grocery trucks.
That's it.
When I came back to Shreveport.
That's it. What happened in World War II, you couldn't deliver groceries over 50 miles, so we came to Shreveport, Minden, and Monroe and opened up wholesalers there. So we started in Bernice. Yeah.
So your plan was to go back and work in the family business as a lawyer, or just work in the family business?
Just work in the family business and do lawyer if they needed it, but it was mostly, when I did come back, it was a sales manager.
At Salley?
Yeah.
Now, how did you get to law school?
How did I get to law school?
Yeah, in other words, was that just you were going to go, or was there?
No, I've always intended to go to LSU, law school. As soon as at that time, you went 3 years in college, and the first year in law school was referred back to the college, and you got a degree then. So I was out of law school in 6 years, college and law school.
College and law school. So when did you graduate from LSU law school?
In 58.
And at that time, just a couple of the professors, or perhaps the dean, who was there at LSU?
Well, they had famous professors, if you know the books. They had Wex Malone, they had Denson Smith, they had McMahon, and all three of them they had books and they were the professors. We just had great professors. Now,
when you graduated from LSU Law School, did you come to Shreveport, or did you go back to Bernice? Where?
I came to Shreveport. That was our biggest sales place, and my wife was from Bossier, and so we came back to Shreveport.
What first job? What was your first job? Was it back with the family business?
First job was a small independent store in Oil City that Uncle Jack said go up there and clean it up and rearrange the merchandise. So with a law degree, I was good at that.
And so we talk about Main Street of Oil City, back by the railroad tracks?
Yep.
And how long did you stay up there in Oil City in the grocery business?
Well, that was just going up there to work at the store for 2 or 3 days and clean it up and put our items that we sold in the store. And then I called on out of Monroe and Bernice during the year and a half before I practiced law. I entered and met at least 1,200 different stores. And it was great. I mean, it served me well. That I'd go in and meet the manager. I'm Charles Salley. I'm the sales manager. Is there anything we can do for you? What can we do? And,
Give me the geographic area you covered again.
Camden, Lake Providence, Alexander, Marshall, Texas, and all in between.
And your title was sales manager?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you were at LSU and came back to Shreveport, do you recall any of your classmates at LSU that came back and were going to practice law in Shreveport?
Yeah, Kermit Simmons, Mickey Simmons, who then went to Winfield later on, John Brown. There were probably 5 or 6, but I think the greatest thing is from Louisiana Tech, there were 7 of us that went to law school. One got tired and left. With a 50% flunk rate, every one of them got out of law school.
From Louisiana Tech, your class coming in. Now, at that time, did LSU have a fairly large entering class, or what kind of student count would you have?
We probably had 120. And we only had 3 ladies. And
In your class?
And one of them was the wife of a judge. And we had 2 other ladies, and 2 of them finished.
2 finished out of a class of about 160.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And
I think the other one just got tired of it because, ladies are smarter than men at that age. So.
And still, we know that true today. I'm sure the law school class breakdown today is 50-50 or greater.
I think it's 60% female.
Yeah, it's definitely been a sea change. Now, Charles Salley, when you came back to Shreveport and were working in the family business, how long was it before you started just practicing law?
1.5 years.
And what did you do? What was your first just legal job outside the family drugstore business?
Judge Flanagan at that time was running for judge, and that's when I got in a little judge politics, and he got elected, and he said, why don't you come up with Algie Brown, who was a representative, and Mr. Dozier, and take over my practice. And I went to Uncle Jack and I said, I've looked around here, we got a lot of family here, a lot of in-laws, and I just think I can help by going into law practice, which was great. I mean, I talk to my children, all who have a college degree, all 4 of them. Some have master's degrees. Walter is a lawyer. But I've always told them, even if you don't intend to, you need a degree.
Correct.
And they all finished college.
When you mentioned judge politicking, did you get involved in the judicial races? Because right now we've got a bunch of races going on.
I just supported a lot of, I've supported a lot of people in politics, and I have worked in the legislature, the lobbyists, and I just enjoyed it.
So when you were traveling, as you indicated earlier, in and out of over 1,000 stores, you were meeting people pretty much in this northeast, northwest part of Louisiana, down to Alexandria?
Yeah, southern Arkansas and East Texas.
All right, so what did you do, though, for Judge Flanagan? What were your, as far as a lawyer, what kind of duties did you have?
I'm smiling because I was thinking I was really going to be booming. I went up there and he had 3 cases left. One of them was a non-contested divorce. I forgot what the other 2 was, so I started checking titles for Algie to pay for my rent. And pretty soon my practice grew to, they wanted to invite me in as a partner, but by that time, as I was going to move to the Lund-Irian firm.
Well, let me ask you before you get to your change,
Yeah.
Where were y'all officed? Where was it?
In the Lane building.
All right, now, how did you get, because I know we're going to talk about your long tenure at the Lund-Irian firm, how did you get invited to join that law firm?
I was, Mr. Irian took a deposition of my client, Mr. Val Irian. What a mentor, man. And 2 days later, he called and said, "That's Salley, come over here." He said, "I like what you did in the deposition. We need a young man that's good like you, and we don't have a white Baptist in our firm." Said, okay, I'm coming.
At that time, what kind of work were they doing?
They were doing principally defense work. And Mr. Lund represented Governor Kennan as his lawyer, and we had Mr. Treshelle and Harry Johnson, fantastic person. You know that. That was the basic of the firm.
All right, now you were the young associate at the time?
Yes.
Anybody else who was not a partner besides yourself?
Jack Barnett.
Didn't know that. And where were y'all officing?
We were in the Slattery building. Mr. Johnson was married to a Slattery, so I guess by chance we were in the Slattery building.
Now, you started then at Lund Aaron. About what year do you think that was?
I think that was probably 61.
Now, from 1961 until you retired, you practiced at Lund Aaron, Switzer, Johnson, and Salley.
I
Name
did.
changed a little bit, but you were a named partner
I did.
when you retired. And what year did you retire? I'm going to ask you in between, but when did you retire?
2.5 years ago, if you can backtrack that.
So we're talking a little bit, probably close to 2012.
Correct. That was 50th year anniversary when I quit practicing law.
Now, I assume primarily then when you were starting out in the early 60s at a preeminent defense firm here in North Louisiana, the Lund Aaron firm, you were trying cases, taking depositions, traveling?
Yeah, we had the opportunity, I don't think you do now, where we had cases in all the country parishes in Minden, Mansfield, I think like state got a lawyer in everywhere, so, and Monroe, so I did travel in North Louisiana, yeah.
I mentioned to you before we started talking that we had done a tape many years ago of Charlie Myron, and he indicated that what he used to do was travel down these rural roads for a very low hourly rate compared to the oil and gas business that Shreveport had at the time, but that he was depression-proof, that even during the Depression he was still able to travel down those country roads and try cases for that low hourly rate. And you mentioned that when Mr. Meyer and, was it Mr. Switzer?
Mr. Switzer.
Tell me a little bit about that. They
Well,
had an agreement.
this is what they have told me, is that when they both went to the World War II, that all of the defense firms agreed, we will not take any of your clients while they're gone. We won't try to do that, and you go talk to, like, we represented State Farm when they insured 3 cars here in Shreveport. That was it. And just so everybody lived up to that agreement.
Now, when you came on in 1961, you indicated that Val Iron was there and Mr. Lund was there, and I recall Richard Switzer.
And Mr. Treshelle.
When Mr. Treshelle was practicing, because he had a son that practiced here for a long time as well,
Yeah.
did he do also defense work, or was there a different type of practice that Mr. Treshelle
He did.
had?
Mr. Treshelle did. Mr. Lund did oil and gas. Mr. Treshelle did a lot of truss work and wills and so forth. But everybody did some defense work.
Now, just kind of going back, when you started practicing law in the early 1960s in a defense practice, I assume that the secretaries had just the regular Selectric typewriters?
They didn't have it then.
What kind of, just give me the office setup.
Well, I mean, to do carbon paper, you put carbon in between them and you hit it real hard with your finger to do that. And we got the Selectric maybe 5 or 6 years later, and they would do one line.
Was there air conditioning in the Slattery building when you started?
Yeah, but it went out a lot.
And as I recall, the Slattery building was built as kind of the first like skyscraper in downtown Shreveport, maybe a very nice building.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. And they had a doorman there to help you in the elevator, and it was a pleasant place to be.
When I started practicing, there was somebody who would help you into the elevator, but I think he'd been there maybe 40 years, named Shorty. I don't know if
Shorty, yeah.
if he was there when you started. Or
he could remember all the lawyers because he called us all judge.
Well, I was going to ask you my next question. Tell me a little bit about the judges and I'll suggest to you that I think the federal judge at the time would have been Ben Dawkins.
Yes, Judge Dawkins.
And did you have many cases from the insurance practice that got you to federal court?
Not many. Most of them are in state court. But I guess my best one was going against Art Comedy. And every lawyer probably said this, but we had a jury, and it was where a railroad had damaged a bridge, and we had a really nice old black man on the stand, and Art said, "How far can you see?" And he says, "How high is the moon?" And the jury fell out. Dawkins fell out. So anyway, I can still remember that.
And in the state court, tell me a little bit about the judges. Who was hearing most of what would be trials,
Well,
jury trials, bench trials for insurance defense practice?
Again, I imagine it's like it is now. You did not have a lot of jury trials, and the judges were conservative. So we had Judge Woods and Judge, as we call him, Pops Turner, and of course Judge Flanagan was over there, and there were a few. Judge Clark was there later on, as you know.
Buck Clark, I
Yeah.
know.
And I mean, we were friends with the lawyers and friends with the judge, and I told you the Judge Wood story that
yeah.
One day he called me back in the office by myself before the trial, and he said, "You know, Charles, I'm usually conservative, but yesterday I hurt my back, and those backs are worth a lot more than I thought they were, so I wouldn't settle the case."
In other words, the judges and the lawyers, there was a lot of just the camaraderie.
Yeah.
It was a smaller,
Yeah.
I know,
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
smaller community, but
Yeah.
a lot of give and take with the judges and the lawyers. I also was curious about this. Did y'all have trials during the summer months? Because I don't know that Caddo Parish was air conditioned.
We didn't, for 3 months. And, you know, you broke the circle. I still say it would be good for at least a month not to have it, where you can catch up and do things.
Or take a vacation.
Yeah,
Get with
take a
your family.
vacation.
Yeah, you're not the only one to have suggested that, but so far the judges are not doing it. We'll have to see one of these days. As we kind of move forward, I want to move into the time period in the 1970s when there were a couple things going on in Caddo Parish. In 68, 70s, you had the desegregation school suits were going on, both here in the federal courts and certainly in all the parishes around. And you had, I think, a little bit of a change in the way insurance companies were starting to do business. It was more keeping track of the time and billing by the, what you did, the increment, etc. And I don't know, did your adjusters' relationship change as you moved into the 70s, or was it still?
Well, that's what you guys don't have now. Like Aetna had 7 or 8 adjusters who became lifetime friends. State Farm had it, who became lifetime friends. And I think the system worked good, where you could go out to lunch with them and say, "Let's talk about this case," and we'd make a joint decision. I understand now that you just don't have that camaraderie. And that changed, but I had to keep time from the time I went over to Lund area.
At the start.
We kept time.
Tell me a little bit about, let's stay in the state court system if we could. Give me a case or two, and let's start with your most memorable state court suit that actually would have required a little trial time. Or that would have required, a fairly in-depth investigation of the facts.
The Billie Jean case was in Bossier District Court. And she was a lady that had been married to Johnny Horton, Battle of New Orleans, Hank Williams Jr. And I was hired because they were 2 firms in New York were fighting over the rights to his royalty, Hank Williams Jr., which was considerable. And they had found that when they served her first husband, Mr. Exman, that when you look at the signature and his other signatures, it wasn't compatible. So I called him up and he said a few words about his ex-wife and said, "I'm not talking." So I got on my FBI suit, blue, everything, and hired a plane and went to his dealership and told him, "FBI, I need to talk to him." I shouldn't put that on the tape. So he came in and we talked, and he signed affidavits and stuff, and I said, "Oh, we're going to lose this case." So on the way out, I ducked back in and I said, "Mr. Exman, did you happen to sign that with your left hand?" He said, "Yes, I busted my right hand when I was trying to knock through the door to get to Billie Jean, and that is my signature, left-handed."
So that was a genuine signature.
Yeah, so we won the case.
Now, did y'all have handwriting? Because we've gone through this before. Handwriting or just testimony?
No, it was pretty easy to see. I just got him to sign an affidavit while I was there with both hands, and, and that's what he did. So we didn't need a handwriting expert.
Now, that was in Bossier Court. Who were the Bossier judges, or who was the Bossier judge, if you recall? That
It was probably Judge Weiss.
Who recently, he passed away last month, as I recall. Did you, I'm going to ask you a little bit about jury trials. And you're right, the jury trials perhaps now seem to be on every docket. There's a jury trial. Where it goes or not is sometimes up to the parties, of course, in their settlement discussions. But jury trials, how many jury trials, let me just start with the early 60s. Do you think did you do any? Did y'all do none? How many jury trials did you did as a defense lawyer the first 10 years of your practice?
Probably 10 or 15. I mean, it just wasn't, they either settled or you did. I mean, I think most people really trusted the district judges to do the right thing, and I'm not saying they don't do the right thing now. Let's say you knew what they were going to do.
Right.
And so there were not a lot of jury trials.
Yeah. When I recall coming and starting defense practice, it was just usually a judge trial, and now it just seems there's just much more requests for the jury trials going forward. I'm just curious, did that, as far as your practice, when you were getting toward the retirement toward 2010, was it still, jury trial is what the client wanted, or was bench trial still something that you were
It was a lot more jury trials, and a lot more paperwork and interrogatories and all that stuff. Mr. Iron, when I was doing cases, would sit in the jury box and watch me and then critique me. You don't get that anymore. And I had such a bad basics of English from Bernice that he made me take a correspondence course in English. So I said, okay. I mean, he was just unbelievable. He really was. And I feel bad for those lawyers that go out independently and start practicing by themselves. He would call, now you can't do this anymore, he would first write the lawyer that had sued his insurance company and said, "Thank you for suing my insurance company. We will get together. Come over, we'll drink coffee, and I'll show you my file." And the last 10 years when I tried to call him and say, "Come over and see my file," the young lawyers would say, "Mr. Salley, you're trying to trick me, aren't you?"
They just didn't trust it.
That's what's happening now, huh?
The thing I did want to follow up on a little bit about the mentoring that you indicated that you got.
Yeah.
At the time, the Shreveport Bar Association and the local Atlantic Court is piloting what is going to be a mandatory mentoring program coming out of the Supreme Court in 2015. Everybody is saying what you just said, that there used to be mentoring, and now so many young lawyers are coming out, not with a firm, individually on their own, and who and where are they going to learn how to act right, how to practice law correctly. So that's something that is being identified as a problem. Matter of fact, you need to come back out of retirement and be a mentor right here in Shreveport for the next group coming up in October. When, going back to your practice of law, when you were trying cases from the defense standpoint, give me an idea of who were the plaintiff lawyers on the other side in kind of the earlier time of your practice that you recall going up against.
Well, Booth Lockard, Whitfield Jack. There was a couple out of Manny that were really good. There was some in Kitchen Firm in Mendon, and it was pretty well scattered out. Machota came on. He was real good. And so it was pretty well spread out, not like it is now. And you had no advertising, so.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So back then, the good firms, obviously by their reputation,
That's right.
got cases and got the clients.
Mm-hmm.
And in today's practice climate with the advertising, it's just a different, I know, it's a different camaraderie too, though. I assume that you were in pretty good friendship with some of the plaintiff bar.
I enjoyed trying cases against them, and they enjoyed trying cases against me. I remember when I went to Hot Springs, one of the Ritchie men, and after we took the deposition of the neuro, he says, "You guys like each other?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Y'all acted like it. I don't understand that." I said, "Why dislike people?" So anyway, it was just fun. It really was. I had some people that aggravated you, but God, I loved practicing law.
Charles, that's the story I remember when I was first starting to practice. We were in Caddo in the big courtroom on the second floor on what would be the, I guess, the west end. And then everybody pretty much came to either a docket call or your pretrial conferences. There would be a courtroom full of lawyers.
Right.
So you got to visit, you got to talk with everybody. You were visiting with everybody, and then when the docket got sounded, you went into the back and you had a briefcase, and you opened up your briefcase and you started working, and doing a little dictation too into the the briefcase. And
yeah.
So I'm going to tell you, I do that now. If I go in somewhere, I'm going to have something with me in the event. I've got some downtime just to keep the practice, because my point is the insurance defense practice is time intensive.
That's right.
You've got to work hard and long.
That's what you're selling, time.
That's the product the client wants. And I'm just going to tell you, you mentored me that morning when I saw you there, and I tried to work hard like you had.
Well, I did a good job because you're a heck of a good lawyer.
And we're trying every day.
But the last 15 years of my practice, the court reporter is going to, I tell everybody I did SIN law, S-I-N. And they say, "What is that?" And I said, I represented 2 casinos, Louisiana Downs, strip club, Philip Morris, and in the breast implant cases. And I got to go to the commissions, got to lobby in the legislature, and that was really, really fun.
Right. And when those came to Shreveport, now there were some good lawyers from out of the state that came in with the rate and regulatory part of that, but also the local, casinos, have some very sophisticated attorneys. So that's right. You represented a couple of the casinos right off the bat.
At forming them and working together and buying land and negotiating with the city council and so forth.
And the strip club, the one down on the riverfront?
You know where it is?
I do. I've heard about it.
Yes, it's there.
But there was a lot of legal entanglements.
Yeah, well, Richard King did a lot of it, but they were really, they leaving them alone now, but the cops, they love to come down there and arrest the strippers. I guess they like to watch them on lap dancing, so it became a necessity to show them how to properly lap dance.
To get them within the legal.
Yeah.
The practice, though, as far as your last couple of years, were you doing more mentoring back at your firm? Were you still trying cases up to the time of retirement? Let's get toward the end of your 50th year, 49th, 48th, that last decade. What were you doing with your time primarily, as far as?
I told you the clients I had, but Richard King came and joined us, and we had the privilege, and with my son, to usually afterwards we'd sit and talk about the cases and kind of what they should do and everything. Now you go up there, half the lawyers are at the house working on their computers, and if they want to talk, they email. And that really was one of the factors, that reason, I'm not picking on my firm, that I left. It just, it didn't become personal. And most of them up there are not happy being lawyers, it seems like. I know you say it.
They talk about that at every bar gathering, about the dissatisfaction, the high suicide rate, etc.
Yeah.
But you practiced for 50 years.
Yeah.
And you practiced pretty much with the same firm, and the existence of the Lund, Ira, and Switzer, Johnson, and Salley firm, you think would probably predate World War II, maybe in the 30s?
Yeah, definitely.
I'm just curious, how old do you think that firm started in 1930? You think it started earlier?
Oh, yeah, I think maybe 36 or something, 37, something like that. 'Cause they were, I thought they were old, but they were all around 55, 56. And I can't remember the date, but if you remember, Harry Johnson died at an early age.
He did.
And I was 45 and I was a senior partner because they were all gone.
I remember, I do remember Mr. Johnson passed away. I want to move to something that has always been a memory for me. You were active in the state bar politics.
Yeah.
Now I want to start with, were you in the young lawyers section?
I was chairman.
All right, let me ask you to take a look, and I'm going to ask the videographer to pan in on this one. I think this is a picture
Yes.
of that time period. When were you president of the young lawyers section?
They're about 62, I think. Let me look on the back of this. And I said the great thing about that, one of them is Judge Little, federal court judge.
Pappy Little?
Yeah. Charles Saunier out of Abbeville, Whiteside out of Natchitoches, Jack Britton, Tom Murchison. The great thing, to become chairman, you served probably 4 or 5 years. And as I said, it was just valuable that you could pick up the phone and call a friend in almost any city if you need to know something. And that was carried forward when I became president of the Bar Association.
Well, let's talk about that next. I'm going to ask you again to hold that for the videographer to come in on. You were president of the Louisiana State Bar in, was it 1984? It looks like that, 1985?
Yeah.
That's what's on the cover. And that's the cover you're holding of the, which I've told you, I remember this.
Excuse me.
Louisiana State Bar Journal. You're in front of the Caddo Parish Courthouse as you were coming in to be president, correct?
Correct. That was like the first issue after I was president.
Do you recall, was there anybody, or who would have been president before you? You and I have talked about this.
His name was Lukey Smith from Monroe.
So there was a little North Louisiana presence.
Yeah, and then Judge Fallon, who was probably the greatest president we've ever had, was there. It was after me.
Well, and I'm just going to go ahead since you brought up Judge. He is a federal court judge now?
Yeah,
This
Court of Appeals.
This is a little brochure of a project you started, though, right?
Well, what happened is that normally the president went to the ABA in Chicago during the middle of his year. So by that time, you know, things were downhill. So for the first time, I invited Judge Fallon to go with me because I felt like he was the president-elect, and they started talking about Bar Foundation and CLE, and we didn't know what the heck that was. So we came back and started, mostly Judge Fallon, but and Ledoux Profosky, we started the foundation. First thing we made, all past presidents divvy up $2,500 and got that started. And then we went to Georgia and other state bar conventions and got the CLE and decided, wisely I decided you could quit going at 65. CLE.
So that was you, okay.
Yeah. I thought that was old. It's not anymore. So we did that, and that was a great joy to go to. I went to the Texas Bar 2 times, Arkansas Bar 2 times, Georgia Bar, South Carolina, Missouri, and gosh, we formed from 7 different states. We said we'll never see each other again, so we made a trip and have done that up until last year. Once a year, we all 7 presidents and their wives made a trip together. We went on cruises and went to their homes, and that, I lost my wife in February, and 2 or 3 of them were there at the funeral, and we've
You're
lost.
talking about bar presidents of the states at the same time you were bar president of the state of Louisiana.
That's what I'm talking about.
I did not know that. That's amazing. Let me ask you about the bar, Louisiana State Bar at the time. Did they have an office, a freestanding building as they do today down in New Orleans at the time you were bar president?
They didn't. They were renting a bar association, and that was. I think they had 15 committees, because I remember when I was elected in Biloxi. Can I show that?
I'm going to go to it next. Let's do it. So this next picture I'm going to show you is you and your wife in Biloxi where you are sworn in.
Yeah, right there. You could see I got a good deal. I went to, have you got it? I went to the female association, and I went to the black association, and I promised them that I would, from each one of the associations, I would put one person on every bar committee, which has been the first time that's ever been done. And the female bar was really excited about doing that. So, yourself, they run the bar now.
They do have a big input.
They're so
and
good.
big influence.
They're so good.
What, I'm just curious, in that 1984, who was the governor when you were bar president? I'm just...
Another story?
Yes.
Well, when I was young lawyer president, Governor McKithen was it. And he was going to come to speak to us at the bar. And he said, they called me that morning and said, he can't come. And his press secretary said, what are you going to do? And I'd had a great night that night, so I wasn't feeling good. I said, I'm going to tell the young lawyers McKithen doesn't give a damn about us. And he said, can you hold it up for 35 minutes? We'll get a police car and we'll get over there. That was when McKithen was having on the post and everything. Judge Dixon was a Supreme Court judge. God, I'm trying to think who was the governor then. Probably.
In 84 and 85, wasn't Edwin Edwards?
Yeah, right.
I think.
Yeah, it was.
And I was curious, did he have any, because he comes to speak to the bar, he did. As a matter of fact, when he got out of prison, he came up into a standing room only.
I mean, he can charm anything. I like the man, I really do. I did.
And I'm going back to your bar presidency then, did you have another project? You've gotten the CLE, you've gotten the foundation.
That was it.
Okay. And
my cup was full.
was there requirements, though, that you traveled all around the state? Because now the bar president's going to be on the road all the time.
We did that by invitation only. And I think that what our bar president doing is a good thing he's doing. I might have went to Lake Charles and a few places when they asked you to come. But no, we did not travel.
You mentioned Ladue Provosti, and he's Alexandria, I believe.
Yeah.
And Judge Fallon, of course, in New Orleans area. Was there another bar or another person that, say, for instance, in Monroe, I'm trying to get the time period when you were president, anybody that you recall in Monroe that y'all had a lot to do with, Alexandria, some of the places a little closer to Shreveport?
By a lot to do with, what do you mean?
Well, like I think there was somebody, I think it was Mr. Kelly was going to be president of the bar.
Yeah,
so he would have been active.
We become very good friends. We really did. In fact, he stayed at our house while his wife was being treated with chemo over here. I mean, that's how good friends lawyers were those days.
Well, and that was what I was getting to. While you were, of course, practicing, but also as president of the Louisiana State Bar Association, you've obviously made friends, for a lifetime all across the state and across the South and Southeast.
Right.
Which is good. Now, there's a button that we have here that, I've got a box of these.
Maybe.
Yeah, well, I do. So I'm going to ask you to pull that to the front so he can see it.
I think this was my slogan, but also this is what my wife wore a lot of times. It says, I love lawyers. And if you, okay, if you, what you're going to get to in a minute, read in the Times, she makes the statement that Charles wanted to be a politician, and I told him, we had 4 kids, and you're not going down to the legislature. You can do bar work. So she was always happy about that.
Now I want to show you the article here, and this is going to be from, we had 2 papers for a period of time, and I think this is a journal article, not a Times article.
Yeah.
And that's when you came in. If you could show us a little of there's a couple pictures there we'd like to get.
Well, I brought that because I think that showed how the local papers liked people that did good things in Shreveport. As you know, is when Shea got elected, I think there was an article about that big in the paper, which, I mean, that's a great honor. These are pictures of me, one playing tennis and one sitting at my desk, and they interviewed about 10 different lawyers.
Hold it up just to the front. We'd like to, there you go.
And interviewed my wife and my brother, and they did a good job. But I was just showing you how proud this city was of lawyers and things they did.
Well, also, to be president of the Louisiana State Bar Association, we can count on our hand the number of people from Shreveport. I believe Mr. Pugh was a little ahead of you by about 10 years, maybe.
President Yancey and was president when I was Steve Yancey's father.
So that would be back in the 60s?
Yeah, we're president.
Yourself, Mr. Pugh, and then, of course, Mr. Sockrider took it over. And then, as you just indicated, Larry Shea is this year's president of the Louisiana State Bar Association, which it's been a while.
If he does everything he says he's going to do, he's just well to quit the firm for a year. He is great. He really is.
He's got energy, and he is, like I say, he is on the road a lot. Now, I want to go and ask you a little bit about, after you were the president of the Louisiana State Bar, did you continue to be active in the Bar Association? And we'll start with the State Bar.
Well, not in the State Bar, but I was president of the Louisiana Defense Association. I was president of ABOTA. So I kept active in bar work. But no, I wasn't real active after that.
Now, the LADC, or the Louisiana Associated Defense Council, which I think Professor Murray was the executive director probably at the time that you were serving as president, it still is a very active and a very large organization of defense attorneys.
Right.
The board met sometimes, I think, in Natchez at the Eola. And, it was a well-run organization. When, if you remember, were you president? Was it sometime after the State Bar?
Yes. And, we met up here a couple of times.
The seminar that is put on by the LADC up here, does that start during your time, after your time?
No, it was going on during my time.
And
American Bar of Trial Advocates was by invitation only, as you know.
Yes. And you were president of that as an organization as well?
Of course.
And what year was that?
Excuse me. That was about 86. A lot of that happened in 86. I was president of Piermont Oaks Tennis Club. I was president of the Cotillion, president of a lot of things. I guess I just loved it, but anyway.
You're very
life's
active.
good.
You're active and did good. And are you still playing tennis? I remember.
I hadn't played since last night.
The other thing that I wanted to ask you about is we asked earlier about your family that you grew up in. Tell us a little bit. You mentioned you've got a son that's practicing. Tell me your children are. Go ahead and tell me that at this point.
Okay. One child is here in town, and he does computer work, which is gratifying to him. I have a daughter that teaches art at one of the schools here. I have a daughter in Mandeville who works for the school system as a counselor for children that act up in class and things like that. And then Walter is my attorney. He went to SMU.
And he practices in the same firm?
Yes.
And he's a defense lawyer, most of the workers' comp, correct?
Right.
All right, so your 4 children have done good. You got grandchildren?
7.
All right, tell me a little bit about your grandchildren.
Well, the oldest one, whom I'm supposed to have lunch with pretty soon, goes to Grambling because that's the only place you can get a master's degree in social work. Carmen Ortiz lives in New York and does fashion.
So Samantha, is she the oldest grandchild?
Yeah, she's
Okay.
the oldest grandchild. And then Walter has 3. He has twin boys and a girl. The girl's going to L.A. soon to work in a charitable organization for a year. Walter has moved to Rockford, Texas. So is your modern convenience. His secretary lives in North Carolina. He lives in Texas. He's going to continue the practice in the firm, and which I'm happy to spend the night with me a couple of nights when he is there. So that's my 4 children. I guess I got them all.
4 children and your grandchildren.
And
Now,
and I can't take a nap in the afternoon because they text me all the time. So
it's that modern way of communicating. Now, just very quickly, I know that you and your wife were married for how long? Do you know?
57 years,
Okay.
and it was wonderful.
And she obviously was very much a part of what you did and had to be with 4 children,
Yeah.
the practice of law, and all the leadership roles you
Yeah.
had, including being president of any organization in and of itself is a task.
I was lucky. She was fair. She said, "You're working. You're making things for our family, and I'll take care of the house." That was kind of her slogan. And like when she died, I didn't know where the silverware was. But anyway, yes, I couldn't have done it without her.
All right, so I guess, Charles Salley, kind of in a way of looking back, you would consider yourself a lucky man. You had a good family that brought you up, and I know they were in the grocery business,
Yeah.
wholesale, when I was in town. You got to law school, and you practiced pretty much with the same firm for almost a 50-year career.
Yeah, except for about a year. Yeah.
A very prestigious defense firm whose continuation, as you know, you're very much aware they're still doing great. They're doing well. Your children are doing well, and you had a great wife for 57 years, and you have all the bar leadership that we know about. So as far as just what you might, and this is something I didn't tell you I was going to ask you, but I'm going to ask you. It's something, what would you tell, and you've got a son, so maybe you've already had this conversation, but young lawyers who are coming out today, and we talked about this a minute ago, there's a lot of talk about the lawyer profession not being what it should be. It's too stressful. It's not, the job satisfaction isn't there. It's still a profession, as you and I would agree on. Any advice you would give the young lawyers coming in today?
Communicate by phone. Communicate. If they're in town, invite them to a cup of coffee and talk to them about their case and about yours and what your chances and what their chances and what we ought to do to dispose of this where it's equitable to both parties.
Perfect. And we're going to go ahead and close our interview today. I want to make sure, is there any case that we haven't talked about that you recall that you wanted to visit about? Any event in the 50-year practice, primarily here in Shreveport, would be what I'd be interested about.
I would say the only funny thing, and I guess this is bragging on yourself, is I was in Monroe and trying a jury trial, and the other lawyer called me to the bench to the judge and says, "Judge, the jury keeps smiling at me." And the judge said, "I can't help that. Maybe you ought to smile." Anyway, that's how much I loved it. I did.
You did good.
And I would, like you said, communications. Good gracious. Don't send them an email and say, "I got this case." Call them up and say, "What can we do?"
Now, as far as the Shreveport Bar Association, which of course we're in a building now, which is new for the bar to have such a building,
Which is wonderful.
and a place to meet and to have, camaraderie and get-togethers and professionalism. As you've retired, if you were asked to come back and participate in bar events and bar functions, is that something that your time would permit, and your energy and your interest?
Well, yes, and you know that I come to all the bar luncheons, and I just, because I love lawyers, and you do a great job, and all the other ones, and I'm still coming.
Charles Salley, I want to thank you on behalf of the Louisiana Bar Foundation and the Shreveport Bar Association for sitting and visiting with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You did good, Larry.